Hey, when your future employer asks you if you're stress resistant, you proudly say yes, being sure that you can handle everything. But in a month, you are at the edge of an emotional burnout, regret accepting the offer, and simply being alive. If you search on the information how to be stress resistant, you'll probably find some advice like eat well, sleep enough, and just stay positive. But what if you are doing all of it, but it doesn't seem to decrease stress? A year ago, I started working in a social service, and I was sure that I was ready for everything. But it turned out I was not. During this time, I learned that being stress resistant is a skill, and I will show you how it works. One of my friends is doing a diploma on management, and there I found a really interesting task. One of the courses is specifically targeted on just describing yourself. You literally have to write 40 pages on describing all of your weaknesses, your strengths, everything that you know about yourself. You cannot use any theory, nothing. You just need to write all of those reflections about how you're acting in stressful situations, what things you know, and what are your strengths. You also need to describe some of your greatest achievements and some of your greatest failures. This helps you to understand who you are and what your needs are. People who don't get it are living in an auto mode. And when they're feeling some stress, they're trying to fight with it, just giving their bodies some sugar, alcohol, or drugs. They release their emotional stress on their family and partners. But it is only making it worse because they're entering the endless circle of suffering. If you do like this, you're gonna say hello to chronic fatigue and emotional burnout. In those examples, you can see a pattern. Basically, to become stress resistant, you only need to know two aspects: the subjective and the technical side of stress. The subjective side of stress resistance includes emotional and physical state. Basically, you need to know how to make a self-maintenance. Speaking of emotional side, you really need to have a good self-perception. You need to know your triggers, traumas, and your limits. In the end, this is something that forms your confidence. Basically, when you know what you can handle and when you need to stop. This is a very important aspect because if you don't know your limits and if you don't know how to set self-boundaries, you're going to start doing some work, and once you're receiving stress, you don't know when to stop and how much problems you can handle. And once you realize, it is going to be too late. What about physical maintenance? It's when you actually understand your body and you know how much you need to sleep, what you need to eat in order to feel well, what physical activity can help you to release stress. Most of the people don't understand this thing, that you need to maintain yourself emotionally and physically. Basically, like simply after a really hard interview, what you're going to do, you're going to try to just calm down yourself emotionally. A really nice technique that I'm doing is just to count from 10 to 1, from 1 to 10, just to take a deep breath and just analyze what has happened. And the second thing is to take care of your body. Take a little walk, go and make yourself some tea, the things like that. These are some details that help you to recover from small problems and those stress that are constantly happening to you, because once you realize that you were stressed and you act immediately and you help yourself to recover from it, it is not going to transfer to the next situation. Now let's talk about the technical side of stress. This is basically a trigger that helps you to show if you have those ability or skills to work with this stress. For example, those could be knowing how to work with deadlines, multitasking, some emergencies, or knowing how to work with aggression. And here you actually need a real skill to work with all of those situations. For example, if you're just walking on the street and somebody hurts himself and you don't know how to provide first aid, you're going to stress because you don't have this the technical skill how to solve the situation. But if you know the theory and if you have practiced that, you know immediately what to do, and this is going to help you to avoid stress. In these cases, you need to have a natural skill of doing all of those things, because many people stress at work because of the deadlines, because they don't know how to set the priorities, they don't know how to multitask, they don't know how to deal with the emergencies, and you need to get a skill of it and see what actually the problem that causes the stress at work, and realize that probably you just don't have a skill of it. As a result, you can see that knowing how to deal with a real problem and knowing how to maintain yourself physically and emotionally is going to avoid being stressed all the time. If you slept well, if you know your limits, if you know your traumas and what can trigger yourself, if you know how to deal with those specific problems at work, it is going to become much easier. You're going to react to that much better and be much more flexible, because anyways, everything that stresses you, it's something new, something that you didn't know before, and in this moment you're being rigid. There is just a simple exercise that can also help you to understand what you need to improve. Try to imagine if you were about to quit your job and you needed to hire a person to replace you. What would you say to this person that he needs to be aware of? Would you warn him about the aggression of the clients? Would you warn him about the deadlines or something that is really hard to handle? When you look at this, you're going to understand the source of your stress at work or at any other sphere of your life. Now let me show you how you can practically become more stress resistant every day. In the morning, when you know that you are going to have a lot of stress, you're going to make a little self-maintenance. It's like before using a car, you need to check if everything is all right. You need to set your brain and mood for the day in the morning, because if you wake up and directly jump to the train, just overcrowded and overwhelmed, don't expect much from yourself this day. You need to be aware of what you are feeling during the stress. What program are you choosing? Are you choosing to defend yourself? Are you choosing to feel pity for yourself? What is going on at the moment of stress? Also, try to find some techniques to improve the technical side of the stress. What can you do better to deal with the problem? The issue is that if you jump from one stressful situation to another, this is going to be really difficult to handle. And don't forget to act after the stressful situation, just to take a break, go and get a cup of tea, have some rest, do some physical activities, something to forget about those situations. And once you leave the environment when you had it, you need to let those emotions go and forget about it. During this year, I realized that it was really hard for me to work with aggression, because I didn't actually know that I was triggered when people yell at me. And what really helped me is that we actually had a specialist, a psychologist, who explained to us where the aggression come from and how to work with it, and also how to speak to people who are being aggressive to you. That was a technical side that I needed to learn, how you actually need to talk to people and what you need to tell and ask. And there also was a subjective part of the problem. I was usually stressed because I was triggered that someone was yelling at me, and I didn't know how to react because I felt like I was a little child and my parents were screaming at me. Once I realized that, I understood what I was feeling and how I could deal with that. Basically, I got the tool how to respond professionally, and I knew the technique, And on the second part, I knew how to handle my emotions. And afterwards, I also knew that after some situations like that, I really needed a break, go probably talk to my colleague and just get a cup of tea, go and take a break. And after the working day, I realized that I need to do more physical activities, going for a walk, doing something that can help me to forget about it. Because even when I was on my way home and I would say like, okay, the work is done, everything is okay, I'm going home, I would still keep in mind all of those situations. They would still go just like that. And once when I'm coming home, I can still not forget about it. And only some activities would help me. If you don't have time to fix yourself after all of those stressful situations, how can you expect anything from yourself and even being productive? This is why those advices that you need to sleep enough and eat well actually work. But you need to use them in complex with other things. You need to develop yourself in other spheres and see what can actually resource you and help you at the time of the stress. Probably the next time, if your future employer asks you if you are good at dealing with stress, you can actually ask him what kind of stress is that and what skill you need to deal with it better, so that you will be ready and understand what is going on at this work. If you found this video interesting and useful for you, I would really appreciate if you subscribe for my channel. Thank you and have a nice day!